Hello, welcome to Heart Explain Therapy, and I want to talk a little bit about something recently that's happened where it's come out in the news again that now they're talking about possibly a transsexual person fighting in the female UFC. This story came out a while back now, but apparently it's just resurfaced with them still trying to fight that somebody who's had a sex change should fight in the octagon with the females. Now, I think I want to talk about the psychology of what's really going on. When you say an opinion, like something as in, no, they can't fight with females, I think what a lot of people hear on a certain side of the fence, the pro-transgender mixing with female side of the fence, is that these people are against that identity, your sexuality. And I think that you're so used to everything being a struggle for you to fight to actually get something and achieve something, that when you get this identity, this is just something that carries on, and it's all that you see every time somebody says no. I think it happens with race, I think it happens with feminism, I think it still happens with white privileged men. They are so obsessed with their opinion and their rights, or their rights being right, that they don't take a no or a disagreement in the right way. Now let's just look at why people say no, this can't happen. It's because of scientific reasons. It's because of bone density, muscle mass, muscle strength, speed, the differences that this person will still have despite the hormonal treatment and the sexuality change, despite the actual operation that's changed certain sexuality parts or inner organ parts because they have this treatment. And they're saying that these certain things won't change enough to make it fair. In fact, it will put female fighters in danger. Now, we've had this recently with the rugby team as well. Female rugby team have had to reject transgender people. And it's not saying that they don't accept transgender or sex changes. It's not about that. There's scientific proof that this would not be good for, it would just not be fair. And understand that if you see something quite obvious, you will understand it in this perspective. And if you had common sense, even people who change sexuality might see this perspective, hopefully. Let's take an example of the best people in their sports. Usain Bolt. He has a sex change. He wants to race 100 metres with females. Now, do you see that even though he has had the sex change, the hormonal treatment, he's still going to be faster than all of the females in the 100 metre sprint. Now, if you say that's okay, it doesn't matter. They don't get offended or hurt by this. It's a race where they don't physically have to be, have a fight with Usain Bolt. They don't have to play rugby and tackle Usain Bolt. So this is just fair. They're running 100 metre sprints. It's unfair because it's genetic, natural, instinctive, code, DNA, body, posture, bone density, muscle mass, strength, speed. It's that has been male and full of testosterone for a very long time, regardless of the medication that it will most likely be on now because of the sex change. So it's still not fair. So you can't just mix males and females in sports tomorrow. This is why it's not done, because there's an unfairness there. And when transgenders fight for their unfairness, most of the time it's completely legitimate. We're all really fighting for what we presume to be unfair. So this is where common sense, the psychology of common sense, has to come into uh, the sort of boardroom, we have to look at the evidence and say, is there enough change to make Usain Bolt the female that basically diminishes his bone density, body mass and all these things that make him fast as a male, the fastest male on the planet? Does this degrade enough to make it fair race with females? And the answer will always be no. Djokovic, the tennis player, would be exactly the same. You could argue that the only real sport where I could see it would be natural for females to take part against men could possibly be driving a car, like Formula One or rally driving. I could see how females could compete in that environment because of the act of the physical car being the difference. I'm sure a female person could have the skills to drive a car as fast as a man. But when it comes to physical sport, when it's a physical one-on-one, it's very unnaturally balanced to have, a fight, a rugby game, a football game. There's a big difference in the skill and talent. Now, this isn't being negative to sexuality change or saying anything about masculinity and femininity. It's just a fact. So we have to make sure that it's fair, it's understood, and it's not seen as anti-something. It's not anti-something if it's based on fairness, if it's based on what's right with common sense. And I think that now we're living in a world where people just have this one view and that's it, and it's seen as that's right, and that anything should go because it's a human right, it's a human law that has to be changed right now in this second. But we've got to bring science into it, we've got to bring the physical aspects when it's a contact sport into it. So I just think this conversation doesn't need to be had, and it doesn't need to be had on the UFC are anti-transgender and the rugby union are anti-transgender. It's not anti-sexuality at all. If anything, it is pro-science and maths and fact-based evidence. So I think that's a reasonable view of it, and I think it's also fair enough to understand why people in certain areas who want this change and want this to happen, there's no outlet for them. We have to create transgender sport. This is the only way that we can really meet everybody's criteria. It can be easily formed in the future because there's going to be more people changing sexuality and doing this in the future. So this is something that's definitely going to take place, just as we've had the recent development of the Paralympics now, just growing and growing and growing and becoming such a brilliant thing for human history, really. This will happen with sexuality. So we don't have to have a war. It's not a heterosexual war. It's not a straight versus any sexuality. It's just what's right and what's fair. And that's what you want, that's what we want, that's what they want, that's all these groups can say anything they want based on their upbringing, privilege and bias to their own whatever they are. But we have to have a middle ground, a middle understanding that has to be based on intellect and common sense, some sort of logic and rationale that's fair. And that is exactly what you've been fighting for, and lots of people have been fighting for hundreds of years.